My daughter-in-law looked me in the eye and said I should move to a senior apartment so she and her unemployed parents could have more space in my house, the house I own. The house that's part of a $2.4 million real estate portfolio she doesn't know exists. She thinks I'm a broke retired teacher barely surviving on a pension. She has no idea I've been collecting $15,000 in monthly rental income while she plots to steal my property by declaring me mentally incompetent. Last week, I overheard her on the phone, planning to buy my duplex for $180,000, half its market value, using a fake guardianship claim. She told her mother I was confused, forgetful, unable to manage my own affairs. None of it was true, but she needed that story to justify taking everything Leonard and I spent 30 years building. I didn't confront her. I didn't argue. I just smiled, made dinner, and called my property manager. Then I called my real estate attorney. Because Janelle made one critical mistake. She assumed that quiet meant powerless, that modest meant poor, that a 64-year-old black woman who taught elementary school for 32 years couldn't possibly own anything worth fighting for. If you're watching this, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to share will change how you think about family boundaries, financial privacy, and what happens when people mistake kindness for weakness. This is the story of how I lost my daughter-in-law, almost lost my son, but kept every single property I worked my entire life to build. Let me take you back to March 2023, 18 months ago, when this all started. My name is Angela Barron. I'm 64 years old. I taught third grade at Booker T. Washington Elementary in Baltimore City for 32 years before I retired in 2022. I live in a duplex on Harford Road in East Baltimore, modest 2-bedroom unit, nothing fancy. I drive a 2014 Toyota Camry with 142,000 miles on it. I wear the same cardigans and comfortable shoes I wore when I was teaching. To look at me, you'd think I was just another retired teacher living on a small pension, clipping coupons, worrying about heating bills in winter. That's exactly what my daughter-in-law Janelle thinks. What she doesn't know is that I own this duplex and 7 other rental properties scattered across East Baltimore. 8 buildings total. Small apartment buildings. Duplexes. Nothing flashy, but all paid off, all producing income, worth about $2.4 million combined, bringing in $15,000 every month in rent after expenses. My husband Leonard and I bought our first property in 1995, this duplex where I still live. We were both 35 years old. Leonard was a union electrician making $72,000 a year. I was teaching, making $38,000. We saved every penny we could. Lived in Unit A, rented out Unit B for $850 a month. That rental income paid our mortgage. When the foreclosure crisis hit in 2008, 2009, 2010, Leonard and I bought distressed properties at auctions, fixed them up ourselves. Leonard did the electrical work. I painted, cleaned, handled the tenant screening. We'd rent them out, use that income to pay down the mortgages fast, then buy another property. By the time Leonard died 4 years ago from a heart attack at age 62, we owned 8 buildings. All paid off, all generating income. Leonard's life insurance gave me $145,000. I put it in savings. Between my teacher's pension of $3,200 monthly and the rental income of about $15,000 monthly after expenses, I bring in roughly $14,000 every month. My expenses are maybe $2,800. I don't need much. The house is paid off. The car is paid off. I live simply because that's who I am, not because I have to. But I didn't tell people about the properties, didn't broadcast my finances. It wasn't anybody's business. Teachers don't talk about money. We show up, we work hard, we live modestly. That's the story people expect, so that's the story they see. Then, 18 months ago, my son Terrence was in a car accident. Terrible accident. Broke his left leg in 3 places, fractured his pelvis, spent 6 weeks in the hospital. Terrence is 35, works as a lab technician at Johns Hopkins. Good job, good insurance. But insurance doesn't cover everything. The bills added up fast. $68,000 in medical debt after everything was processed. Terrence and his wife Janelle were drowning. They had 2 kids, my grandchildren Kendra, who's 8, and Tyler, who's 6. They were renting an apartment in Dundalk for $1,650 a month. Between the medical bills, the rent, 2 car payments, student loans, they couldn't keep up. So I did what any mother would do. Told them to move in with me. Temporarily. 6 months max, just until Terrence recovered and they could stabilize financially. They moved into my duplex in March 2023. Terrence and Janelle took my 2nd bedroom. The kids slept on air mattresses in the living room. It was tight, but it was family. We'd make it work. That was 18 months ago. They're still here. And somewhere between March 2023 and August 2024, Janelle stopped seeing me as Terrence's mother and started seeing me as an obstacle, a burden. Someone taking up valuable space in what she decided was her house. It started small. Comments about my furniture being outdated. Suggestions that I should get rid of Leonard's recliner because it took up too much space. Questions about why I didn't have a smart TV or newer appliances. I let it slide. Janelle was stressed. Terrence was still recovering. Money was tight for them. People say things they don't mean when they're under pressure. But then 3 months ago, Janelle lost her job. Marketing coordinator at a small firm downtown. They downsized, let her go with 2-week severance. Since then, she'd been doing freelance marketing work. Making maybe $2,400 a month on good months, some months less. But she wasn't looking for full-time employment. Wasn't sending out applications. Just taking occasional freelance projects and acting like staying home with the kids was her contribution to the household. Meanwhile, I was paying for everything, all the groceries, all the utilities, internet, cable, everything, and Janelle had the nerve to suggest I should downsize. The shift happened gradually, then all at once. By July, Janelle wasn't just suggesting I downsize. She was actively planning my exit from my own home. "Angela, have you thought about those senior living communities?" she asked one morning while I was making breakfast. She was drinking coffee at my kitchen table, still in her pajamas at 10 a.m. "They have activities, game nights, book clubs. You'd have people your own age to socialize with." "I have people my age at church. But wouldn't it be nice to have that community every day? And you wouldn't have to worry about maintenance or yard work or any of that." I didn't have yard work. I had a small patio. And maintenance on my duplex was handled by Patricia, my property manager, though Janelle didn't know that. She thought I was the one fixing leaky faucets and replacing air filters. "I'm comfortable here, Janelle." "I know, but comfort isn't everything. The kids are getting bigger. They need their own space. Kendra's 8 now. She can't keep sleeping on an air mattress in the living room. It's not fair to her. Not fair to Kendra. As if I was the one who'd chosen to cram 4 people into my 2-bedroom home. As if I was the problem that needed solving. Maybe you and Terrence should start looking for your own place again. It's been 18 months. Janelle's face hardened. "With what money, Angela? Terrence is still paying off $68,000 in medical debt. We're barely covering our car payments and basic expenses. We can't afford first month, last month, and security deposit on a new apartment. Then maybe cut some expenses. The BMW you're leasing, the private gymnastics classes for Kendra, those aren't luxuries. Those are investments in our children's future. I'm not going to punish my kids because Terrence had an accident. But you'll punish me by taking over my house," I thought. But I didn't say it, not yet. 2 weeks later, I came home early from Bible study at Greater Hope Baptist. I'd forgotten my reading glasses. Walked in quietly through the side door. And that's when I heard Janelle in my bedroom. On the phone, in my private space where she had no business being. "Mom, I'm telling you, this is the perfect solution." Her voice was animated, excited. "Angela doesn't need this whole duplex. She's one person. We could buy it from her at a family discount, maybe $180,000. I looked up the property records. It's listed under some LLC, BD Properties or something, but Angela's lived here forever, so she must own it. My heart stopped. She'd looked up property records. She'd researched my home. But she'd stopped at the LLC name. Hadn't dug deeper to see that BD Properties owned 7 other buildings. Hadn't connected the dots. No, market value doesn't matter because it's family. And honestly, Mom, Angela's not contributing anything anyway. She's living off Terrence and me. Her little teacher's pension barely covers her personal expenses. We're the ones keeping this household running. I gripped the doorframe, living off them, in my own house, while I paid every utility bill, every grocery bill, everything. The thing is, I don't think Angela understands real estate or property values. She's just a retired teacher. She doesn't know how these things work. And between you and me, Mom, she's been slipping a little, forgetting things, repeating herself, getting confused about dates and appointments. I hadn't forgotten anything. I'd never repeated myself except when Janelle wasn't listening. Every bill was paid on time. Every appointment was kept. But she was building a narrative, creating a story. If she resists selling, we have options. Terrence mentioned that maybe we should think about guardianship for her protection. She's 64, living alone wouldn't be safe anyway. There are nice assisted living places where she'd have supervision and we could make sure her pension was being used properly. Guardianship. She wanted to have me declared mentally incompetent so she could control my finances and steal my property. I know it sounds harsh, but Mom, we have to think about our family, about Kendra and Tyler. They deserve stability. They deserve their own home. And this duplex is perfect. Once it's ours, we could renovate, maybe even convert it to a single-family home. Increase the value. Renovate my home. The home Leonard and I bought in 1995. The home we'd painted together, where we'd raised Terrence, where Leonard had died in his recliner, watching the Orioles game. She wanted to gut it and flip it. I'll talk to Terrence tonight, get him on board. He feels guilty about Angela, but once he understands this is what's best for everyone, he'll agree. He always does. I backed out of the house silently, walked to my car, drove around the block 3 times with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Then I pulled over and called Patricia Coleman. "Patricia, I need to ask you something. If someone was living in one of my properties and tried to claim they had ownership interest or tenant rights, what would happen?" "Angela, what's going on? Just answer the question. If they're not on the deed and not on any lease agreement, they have no legal claim. But if they've been there long enough, they might try to argue adverse possession or claim they're month-to-month tenants with rights." "Why? Is this about Terrence and Janelle?" "It might be. I need a real estate attorney, someone who handles family property disputes. David Chen. He's the best in Baltimore for this kind of thing. Handled a case last year where a woman's boyfriend tried to claim half her house after living there 2 years. Angela, you're scaring me. What happened?" "I just overheard my daughter-in-law planning to steal my duplex by having me declared mentally incompetent." Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "Do you want me to call David right now?" "Yes." "And Patricia?" "Don't tell anyone about this conversation." "Not yet. I need to know all my options before Janelle realizes I know what she's planning." That night at dinner, I watched Janelle differently. She was cheerful, smiling, asking if I needed help with anything, playing the role of devoted daughter-in-law while plotting to have me declared incompetent and locked away in assisted living. Terrence came home from his shift at the hospital looking exhausted, kissed Janelle, hugged the kids, nodded at me with that guilty expression he'd been wearing for months. My son knew they were taking advantage. He just didn't know how far his wife was willing to go. The next morning, I met with David Chen at his office in downtown Baltimore. Small practice. Quiet. Professional. The kind of attorney who built his reputation on protecting people, not making headlines. Mrs. Barron, Patricia filled me in on the basics. Your daughter-in-law is living in your property and discussing guardianship? She's researching how to have me declared mentally incompetent so she can buy my duplex at below market value. She thinks I'm a confused old woman who doesn't understand real estate. David pulled out a legal pad. Let's start with the facts. How long have they been living with you? 18 months. Since March 2023. My son Terrence was in a car accident, massive medical bills. I offered to let them stay temporarily while they recovered financially. Do they pay rent? No. Do they contribute to household expenses? No. I pay everything. Utilities, groceries, internet, cable, everything. Do you have any written agreement about the terms of their stay? No. It was family. I trusted them. David nodded, writing notes. Patricia mentioned you own multiple properties? 8 buildings. All paid off. This duplex and 7 others across East Baltimore. Combined value about $2.4 million. Monthly rental income around $15,000 after expenses. David's pen stopped moving. Your daughter-in-law doesn't know about the other properties? She knows I live in a duplex. She doesn't know I own it. She looked up the property records and saw it's under BD Properties LLC, but she didn't dig deeper. She thinks I'm a broke retired teacher barely surviving on my pension. And she wants to buy the property for how much? $180,000. Market value is $280,000. She's calling it a family discount. That's not a discount. That's theft. David leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Barron, what's your goal here? Do you want them out of the property? I want them to understand that my kindness had limits. That taking advantage of family has consequences. I want my home back. But I also want my son to see who he married. That's more complicated. If we pursue eviction, Terrence will be caught in the middle. He'll have to choose between his mother and his wife. He's already making that choice every day he stays silent while she plots against me. David was quiet for a moment. Here's what I recommend. Document everything. Every conversation about you being confused or forgetful. Every suggestion that you should move to assisted living. Every discussion about guardianship or selling the property. Do you have any witnesses to these conversations? I overheard her on the phone with her mother. She doesn't know I heard. That's hearsay. We need something stronger. Does she text or email about any of this? I don't know. Maybe with her mother, or with Terrence. We need to find out. In the meantime, I want you to get a cognitive evaluation. Full mental health assessment from a licensed psychologist. If she's going to claim you're incompetent, we need documentation proving you're not. I'm not incompetent. I know that. But we need official proof. Dr. Sarah Mitchell at Hopkins does these evaluations. I'll send you her contact information. Schedule it for this week. What about the property? Can she actually try to buy it from me? She can try, but you don't have to sell, and if she attempts to file for guardianship, we'll fight it. The burden of proof is on her to demonstrate that you're unable to manage your own affairs. With your rental portfolio and your documented financial competence, that case would fail. But it would be public. Court filings, my business exposed. Yes, which is why I'm recommending a different strategy. Move out. I stared at him. Move out of my own house? Temporarily. Move to one of your other properties. Let Janelle think she's won. See what she does when she believes you're gone and the property is available. If she tries to claim adverse possession or tenant rights, if she tries to sell or rent the property, if she makes any move to take ownership, We'll have clear evidence of her intent. And then we act. You want me to give her my house? I want you to give her enough rope to hang herself. Right now, everything is verbal. Conversations you overheard. Suspicions. If we move now, a good attorney could paint you as a paranoid woman kicking out her struggling family. But if we let her make the first move, if we document her attempts to steal your property, we have an airtight case. I thought about Leonard, about the hours we spent fixing up that duplex, about Terrence growing up there, about giving up my home, even temporarily, to prove a point. How long would I have to stay away? A month, maybe 2, long enough for her to show her hand. And Terrence? My son doesn't know what his wife is planning. That's the hard part, Mrs. Barron. If we're documenting Janelle's behavior, we can't warn Terrence. If he knows you're setting a trap, he might inadvertently tip her off. He has to believe you're actually moving out. So I lie to my son. You omit information temporarily. There's a difference. Was there? I'd spent 35 years teaching Terrence about honesty and integrity. Now I was supposed to deceive him to expose his wife's lies. What happens after we document everything? After she makes her move? Then we file for recovery of property. We pursue any fraud she's committed. We make it very clear that your kindness was not weakness and your property is not up for negotiation. I looked out David's office window at Baltimore's downtown skyline. Somewhere in this city, Janelle was probably looking at furniture catalogs, planning how to renovate my duplex once she stole it, planning which assisted living facility to dump me in, planning a future built on erasing me. Set up the meeting with Dr. Mitchell. I'll get the cognitive evaluation. And David, start drafting whatever papers we'll need. Because if Janelle wants to play this game, I'm going to teach her a very expensive lesson about underestimating retired teachers. One more thing, Mrs. Barron. Once we start this process, it's going to get ugly. Family relationships will be damaged. Your son may choose his wife over you. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Terrence, about the boy I'd raised, about the man who'd been watching his wife disrespect his mother for 18 months without saying a word. If my son chooses the woman who's trying to steal from his mother, then I've already lost him. At least this way, I'll keep my property. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's office was in the Johns Hopkins Medical Complex. 3 days after meeting with David Chen, I sat across from her answering questions designed to assess my cognitive function. Mrs. Barron, can you tell me today's date? August 14th, 2024, Wednesday. And who is the current president? Joe Biden. She went through the standard tests: memory recall, problem solving, naming objects, counting backward from 100 by 7s, drawing a clock showing a specific time. I'd spent 32 years teaching 8-year-olds. These tests were easier than a third-grade math quiz. Mrs. Barron, can you tell me why you're here today? My daughter-in-law is planning to have me declared mentally incompetent so she can steal my property. I need documentation proving I'm cognitively sound. Dr. Mitchell didn't look surprised. She'd probably heard worse. Tell me about your typical day, your routine. I wake up at 6 a.m., make coffee, read my Bible for 30 minutes, check emails from Patricia, my property manager, about any tenant issues, pay bills online, go to the grocery store or run errands. Wednesdays I have Bible study at church. Saturdays I volunteer at the community center teaching adult literacy classes. Sundays I'm at church from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. You mentioned a property manager. Can you explain your financial situation? I explained the 8 properties, the rental income, the LLC structure, the 30 years Leonard and I spent building our portfolio. Dr. Mitchell took notes, asked clarifying questions about property management, tax implications, maintenance schedules. After 2 hours, she set down her pen. Mrs. Barron, your cognitive function is excellent, well above average for your age. Your memory is sharp, Your reasoning is sound, and you demonstrate sophisticated understanding of complex financial matters. I'll have my formal report ready in 3 days, but I can tell you now that there is zero evidence of cognitive decline, dementia, or any impairment that would justify guardianship. Can you make that report very detailed? I need it to be unquestionable. I'll document everything: test scores, observations, functional assessments. If anyone tries to claim you're incompetent, this report will destroy that argument. I left her office feeling vindicated but not relieved, because documentation wouldn't fix my real problem. My son's wife wanted to erase me, and my son wasn't stopping her. That evening, I made my announcement over dinner. Terrence, Janelle, and the kids were eating the pot roast I'd made. Kendra was telling a story about school. Tyler was playing with his food. Normal family scene, except nothing about us was normal anymore. I've made a decision, I said quietly, about my living situation. Janelle's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. What kind of decision? I'm going to move. Give you all more space like you've been suggesting. Terrence looked up sharply. Mom, you don't have to do that. I think I do. Kendra needs her own room. You and Janelle need privacy. I've been thinking about what you said, Janelle, about senior living communities. And you're right, it might be time. I watched Janelle's face carefully. She was trying not to smile, trying to look concerned instead of triumphant. Angela, are you sure? I mean, if this is about what I said, I didn't mean to pressure you. Liar. That's exactly what she meant to do. I'm sure. I've looked at a few places. There's a nice apartment community in Towson. For seniors. 1 bedroom, very manageable. I'm going to put in an application this week. What about this place? Janelle asked, too eager. What happens to the duplex? I'll figure that out. Maybe the landlord will let you take over the lease. The landlord? Janelle's eyes gleamed. Do you have contact information? Maybe Terrence and I could work something out. You know, take over your lease, or even discuss buying the property if the owner's interested in selling. She thought I was a renter. After living here 29 years, she thought I'd been renting this whole time. I can get you the property manager's information. She handles all that. Perfect. When are you thinking of moving? 2 weeks, September 1st. Terrence put down his fork. Mom, this is really sudden. Can we talk about this? Just you and me? There's nothing to talk about, son. It's time. You and your family need your own space. I need mine. It's the right thing. After dinner, Terrence followed me to my bedroom, closed the door. Mom, what's really going on? You love this house. You and Dad built your life here. Your family needs room to grow. I'm 1 person. You're 4 people. The math is simple. The math is that Janelle's been pushing you out, and I've been too much of a coward to stop her. At least he knew. At least some part of my son understood what was happening. Terrence, do you know what your wife is planning? What do you mean? I looked at my son, 35 years old. Good man. Weak spine. Caught between the woman who raised him and the woman who married him. Did he know about the guardianship plans? The scheme to buy my property at half price? The lies about me being confused? Never mind. Help me pack this weekend. I'll need boxes. Mom, I said, never mind. He left looking guilty. Good. He should feel guilty. He'd chosen Janelle's comfort over his mother's dignity for 18 months. Now he could live with that choice. Over the next week, I moved my important belongings to one of my other properties. A small duplex on Greenmount Avenue. I took Leonard's photos, my personal papers, my jewelry, my clothes, left behind furniture, kitchen supplies, all the everyday items that made the Harford Road duplex look lived in. Janelle watched me pack with barely concealed excitement. Angela, are you sure you don't want to keep more of your things? The new place might have room. The new place is smaller. I'm downsizing. Most of this can stay. Well, If you're leaving furniture, maybe Terrence and I could use it? Save you the trouble of moving everything? That's fine. Use whatever you need. She thought she was winning. Thought she was getting the house, the furniture, everything. She had no idea I was documenting every conversation, that David Chen had already drafted the recovery papers, that Patricia was keeping detailed records of every lie Janelle told. On August 31st, I loaded the last box into my Camry. Kendra hugged me crying. Tyler held onto my leg. Terrence looked miserable. Janelle looked victorious. "Thank you for understanding, Angela," she said. "This really is what's best for everyone." "I'm sure it is, Janelle. I'm sure it is." I drove away from my duplex, watching it disappear in the rearview mirror. The home Leonard and I bought in 1995, where we raised our son, where Leonard died. I was giving it up temporarily to expose the truth permanently. Now we'd see exactly what Janelle did when she thought she'd won. I'd been gone from the Harford Road duplex for exactly 4 days when Patricia called me at my Greenmount Avenue property. "Angela, you need to hear this. Janelle contacted me this morning asking about purchasing the property." "What did she say?" "She introduced herself as Terrence Barron's wife, said they'd been living in the unit for 18 months taking care of you, and now that you'd moved to assisted living, they wanted to discuss buying the property from the owner. She offered $175,000 cash. $175,000, even lower than the $180,000 she'd told her mother. My property worth $280,000, and she was offering $175,000. "What did you tell her?" "I told her I'd pass the offer along to the owner and someone would be in touch." "Angela, she also said something else. She said you'd signed a document giving them permission to negotiate on your behalf for the property purchase, said you weren't cognitively able to handle real estate transactions anymore." "I signed nothing." "I know. But she's creating a paper trail, building a narrative. Let her build. We're documenting everything." The next call came from David Chen. "Mrs. Barron, we have a problem." Janelle filed a petition with Baltimore City requesting a change of occupancy permit for your Harford Road property. She's claiming she and Terrence are the primary residents and you've permanently relocated. Can she do that? She's trying. The petition claims you abandoned the property and they've assumed responsibility for it. If the city approves it, she could argue adverse possession. That after 18 months of continuous occupancy and now your departure, they have tenant rights. So she's trying to steal my house through bureaucratic paperwork. Essentially, yes, it's actually clever. If she can establish herself as the tenant of record, evicting her becomes much more complicated. She'd have legal protections. What do? We file an objection. I'm preparing documentation now showing you own the property through BD Properties LLC, that you never abandoned it, that you temporarily relocated to another property you own, and that Janelle and Terrence were guests, not tenants. But Angela, this is moving faster than I expected. She's not wasting time. 2 weeks after I moved out, Mrs. Washington from next door called me. "Angela, I don't want to gossip, but I thought you should know what's happening at your place." "What's happening?" "Janelle had a locksmith come yesterday, changed all the locks, and this morning there was a for rent sign in the front window, advertising your Unit B for $1,500 a month. She was trying to rent out my property. The unit I'd been renting to a retired postal worker named James for 6 years. James paid $1,400 monthly. His lease didn't expire until March 2025. But Janelle didn't know that because she didn't know I was the landlord. "Mrs. Washington, did you talk to her?" I asked if she'd bought the place. She said not yet, but she was managing it for the owner. Said you'd moved to a nursing home and given them power of attorney to handle the property. "Angela, is that true?" "No. I never gave anyone power of attorney." "I didn't think so. You're the sharpest woman I know. But honey, people are talking. Janelle's been telling everyone you had to go to assisted living because of memory problems, that you couldn't manage your own affairs anymore, that it's sad but necessary. The lies were spreading. She was destroying my reputation in my own neighborhood while trying to steal my property. That afternoon, I drove past the Harford Road duplex, stayed in my car across the street. The for rent sign was there, professional looking. Listed Unit B, 2 bedrooms, $1,500 monthly, and a phone number. I called it. Janelle answered. Hello, you're calling about the Harford Road rental? Yes, I saw the sign. Is it still available? It is. The unit is currently occupied, but the tenant is moving out at the end of the month. We're taking applications now for an October 1st move-in. Can I ask how you heard about it? The tenant isn't moving out. James had no intention of moving. His lease was valid until March. But Janelle was already planning to force him out so she could re-rent my property at a higher rate and pocket the difference. I drove by and saw the sign. Can you tell me about the owner? The owner is elderly and in assisted living. I'm managing the property on her behalf. I've been overseeing it for over a year now, so I know the building very well. Overseeing it. She'd been living in Unit A rent-free while I paid every bill, and now she was claiming she'd been managing my property. What about the other unit? Is that available too? Not currently. My family lives in Unit A, but if you're interested in Unit B, I'd love to show it to you. We're doing showings this Saturday. She was planning to show my property to strangers, walk them through James's unit while he was living there, collect application fees, probably first month's rent and security deposits, all while I owned the building. I hung up and called David Chen immediately. She's renting out my property, advertising it, collecting applications. She's impersonating the landlord. That's fraud. Real fraud. Criminal fraud. Not just civil. Do you have documentation? I recorded the phone call. She identified herself as the property manager, said the owner was in assisted living, said she'd been overseeing it for a year. Perfect. That's exactly what we needed. She's not just living in your property now, she's actively trying to profit from it. That changes everything. What do? We let her do the showing Saturday. We document it. If she collects any money from prospective tenants, that's theft. And then we move. I'll have the papers ready. Recovery of property, fraud charges, everything. What about James, my actual tenant in Unit B? He doesn't know any of this is happening. Call him. Warn him that someone might try to show his apartment. Tell him not to let anyone in. His lease is valid and you're still his landlord. If Janelle tries to force entry, that's another crime we can add to the list. I called James that evening. He was 68, lived alone, retired from the Postal Service after 35 years. Good tenant, quiet, always paid on time. Mr. James, it's Angela Barron. I need to tell you something important about the property. Is everything okay, Mrs. Barron? I heard you moved out. I did, temporarily. But I'm still the owner. And I need to warn you that my daughter-in-law might try to show your unit to prospective tenants this weekend. Show my apartment? But I live here. I know. She doesn't have permission. She's pretending to be the property manager. If anyone tries to enter your unit, don't let them in. Call the police if you have to. Your lease is valid. You have every right to be there. Mrs. Barron, what's going on? My daughter-in-law is trying to steal my property, and she's about to learn a very expensive lesson about fraud. Saturday morning, September 14th. I sat in my Camry across the street from my Harford Road duplex at 9:45 a.m. David Chen was parked 2 cars behind me in his Lexus. Patricia was in her Honda on the corner. We were all watching, waiting, documenting. At 10 a.m., a young couple arrived. Mid-20s, professional looking. They knocked on the door to Unit A. Janelle answered, all smiles. dressed in business casual like she was a real property manager. She shook their hands, gestured welcomingly. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I watched Janelle walk them to Unit B. She knocked on James's door. He didn't answer. She knocked again. Then she pulled out a key, my key that she must have copied, and tried to unlock the door. The lock didn't turn. Because I'd had Patricia change James's lock 3 days ago, James had the only key now. Janelle's smile faltered. She knocked harder. Mr. James? It's Janelle. I have prospective tenants here to view the unit. We discussed this. They hadn't discussed anything. Janelle had probably slipped a note under his door, but James, following my instructions, was pretending he'd never received it. After 5 minutes of knocking, Janelle gave up. I watched her apologize to the couple, gesturing animatedly, probably explaining that the current tenant was being difficult, that he'd be gone by October 1st, that she'd show them photos instead. They went back to Unit A, emerged 15 minutes later. The woman handed Janelle something. A check, probably. Application fee, maybe first month's rent. Janelle was collecting money for a property she didn't own, for a unit she had no authority to rent. David was taking photos. Patricia was recording video on her phone. We were documenting everything. 2 more couples came at 11 a.m. and noon. Same routine. Janelle apologizing about Unit B being locked, showing Unit A instead, collecting checks, by 1 p.m. She'd probably collected at least $4,000 in application fees and deposits. We have her, David said when I called him after the showings ended. That's theft, fraud, impersonating a property owner. We can file charges Monday morning. What about the people who gave her money? The prospective tenants? They'll get refunded. It's not their fault they were defrauded. But Angela, once we file these charges, it gets serious. Criminal charges, not just civil recovery. Janelle could face jail time. She tried to steal my property. She lied about my mental competence. She collected money under false pretenses. She made her choices. Monday morning, September 16th, David filed a multi-part legal action. Recovery of property from unauthorized occupants. Fraud charges for impersonating property manager. Theft charges for collecting money under false pretenses. Defamation for spreading lies about my mental competence. And a restraining order preventing Janelle from any further actions regarding my properties. The papers were served Tuesday at 3 p.m. I wasn't there, but Patricia told me what happened. The process server arrived while Terrence was at work. Janelle answered the door. Read the papers. Started screaming. This is insane. Angela gave us permission. She signed documents. She wanted us to have this house. Ma'am, if you have documents, you'll need to present them to the court. Do you have a copy of any signed agreement? She did it verbally. She told us we could stay, that we could buy the place. Verbal agreements regarding real property aren't valid in Maryland. You'll need written documentation. Patricia said Janelle called her mother hysterical, then called Terrence at work. He came home early. By evening, they'd hired an attorney, Raymond Foster, a defense lawyer specializing in property disputes. Wednesday, Terrence called me. First time we'd spoken since I moved out. Mom, what are you doing? Protecting my property. Janelle said you're pressing criminal charges, that you're claiming she committed fraud. She did commit fraud. She collected rent deposits for a property she doesn't own. She impersonated the landlord. She lied to prospective tenants. She was trying to help manage the property while you were in assisted living. I'm not in assisted living, Terrence. I'm living in another property I own. One of 8 properties I own, all of which Janelle wants to steal from me. Silence. Long, heavy silence. What do you mean, 8 properties? I mean, your father and I spent 30 years building a real estate portfolio. We own 8 buildings across East Baltimore, worth about $2.4 million. generating $15,000 in monthly rental income. I've owned the Harford Road duplex since 1995. Janelle knew none of this because I didn't broadcast my finances. She assumed I was poor, and that assumption led her to believe she could take what wasn't hers. Mom, if you owned all this, why were you living in that duplex? Why were you acting like you were struggling? I wasn't acting like anything. I live modestly because that's who I am. I don't need a mansion or a luxury car to prove my worth. But Janelle saw modest and decided it meant desperate. Saw quiet and decided it meant weak. She was wrong. She didn't mean any harm. She thought she was helping. Terrence, your wife tried to have me declared mentally incompetent. She researched guardianship. She planned to buy my property at half its value. She told the neighbors I was in a nursing home. She collected money from people for a property she had no right to rent. That's not helping, that's theft. You set a trap. You moved out just to see what she'd do. I gave her space to reveal who she really is. She made every choice herself. I didn't force her to change my locks. Didn't force her to put up a for rent sign. Didn't force her to collect money from strangers. She did all of that believing I was too old and too confused to fight back. What happens now? Now your wife faces consequences. She can plead guilty to the fraud charges, return the money she collected, vacate my property, and we settle this without trial. Or she can fight it, claim she had permission, and we go to court where I present documentation proving every lie she's told. And what about me? What about our relationship? That was the question I'd been dreading. Because Terrence was my son, the boy I'd raised, the man Leonard and I had sacrificed for. But he was also the man who'd watched his wife disrespect his mother for 18 months and said nothing. That depends on you, son. On whether you're willing to acknowledge that what Janelle did was wrong. On whether you're willing to set boundaries with your wife about respecting family. On whether you choose to be a man of integrity or a man who enables theft because it's easier than confronting his spouse. She's my wife, Mom, and I'm your mother. But if you can't see the difference between family loyalty and criminal behavior, then maybe we don't have much of a relationship to save. I hung up before he could respond. Sat in my Greenmount Avenue duplex, staring at Leonard's photo on the wall, wondering if this was what he would have wanted. Wondering if protecting our life's work was worth losing our son. The legal process moved faster than I expected. By the end of September, Janelle's attorney Raymond Foster had filed a response claiming that Janelle had acted in good faith, believing she had implied permission to manage the property during my alleged cognitive decline. David Chen destroyed that argument in 2 pages. He submitted Dr. Sarah Mitchell's cognitive evaluation showing I was perfectly competent. He submitted property records proving I'd owned the duplex since 1995. He submitted recordings of Janelle, claiming to prospective tenants that she was the property manager. He submitted copies of the checks she'd collected, totaling $4,200 from 3 separate couples. The court scheduled a hearing for October 15th, but before we got there, the consequences started spreading through Janelle's life in ways she hadn't anticipated. The 3 couples who'd given Janelle money had to be contacted and refunded. 2 of them were angry enough to file complaints with the Baltimore City State's attorney about rental fraud. The state's attorney opened an investigation. Word spread through the neighborhood fast. Mrs. Washington told her sister. Her sister told the ladies at Greater Hope Baptist. Within a week, everyone at my church knew that Janelle had tried to steal my property and lied about me being incompetent. Sister Patricia, not my property manager but the church elder who'd known me for 20 years, called me crying. "Angela, I can't believe that girl did this to you. After you opened your home to her family, after you helped them through Terrence's accident, how could she? Desperation makes people do ugly things. That's not desperation, that's evil." I didn't think Janelle was evil. I thought she was entitled and desperate and willing to cross lines she shouldn't have crossed. But explaining that nuance to Sister Patricia wasn't worth the effort. The church community rallied around me in ways I hadn't expected. Suddenly, I had offers of help with anything I needed. Sister Diane brought me dinner 3 nights in a row. Brother Williams, who owned a construction company, offered free repairs on any of my properties. Pastor Reynolds called to pray with me. But that community support came with a price for Terrence and Janelle. They'd been attending Greater Hope for 5 years, ever since they got married. Now, the whispers started, the subtle exclusion, the conversations that stopped when they walked into a room. Terrence called me in early October. "Mom, Janelle and I can't go to church anymore. People are staring at us, judging us. Someone left a note on our car calling Janelle a thief. That's unfortunate." "Unfortunate, eh? Mom, we're being ostracized." Kendra came home from Sunday school crying because another kid told her that her mommy tried to steal from her grandma. That hit me hard. Kendra was 8 years old. She didn't deserve to be caught in this. None of this was her fault, or Tyler's fault. "I'm sorry the kids are affected. But Terrence, your wife did try to steal from me. I didn't tell people that story to hurt you." People found out because Janelle's actions became public record. Because she filed legal documents. Because she collected money from strangers. The consequences you're facing are the natural result of her choices. She made mistakes. Does that mean we have to lose everything? Our community? Our church? Our home? You're not losing your home. You're losing my home. There's a difference. Where are we supposed to go? We can't afford first and last month's rent, plus security deposit on a new place. We barely covered our expenses living with you. That's not my problem to solve, Terrence. You're 35 years old. Janelle is 32. You're both educated, employed adults. Figure it out like everyone else does. I can't believe you're being this cold. I can't believe you're calling your mother cold while defending your wife's attempt to steal from her. We have very different definitions of family loyalty. The court hearing on October 15th was brief. Raymond Foster tried to argue that Janelle had genuinely believed she was helping, that she'd misunderstood the situation, that she'd acted without malicious intent. Judge Williams, a black woman in her 50s who'd probably seen every property scam in Baltimore, wasn't buying it. "Counselor, your client changed the locks on a property she didn't own. She advertised rental units without authorization. She collected money from prospective tenants under false pretenses. She claimed to be the property manager when she had no legal authority. Intent is irrelevant when the actions themselves constitute fraud." The judge ruled in my favor. Ordered Janelle to vacate the Harford Road property within 30 days. Ordered her to return all money collected from prospective tenants. Ordered her to pay my legal fees of $8,400 and referred the case to the state's attorney for potential criminal charges. Janelle started crying in the courtroom. Raymond Foster requested leniency given her financial situation. Judge Williams was unmoved. The defendant's financial situation is precisely why she committed fraud. That doesn't make it more understandable, it makes it more calculated. 30 days to vacate, no exceptions. Outside the courtroom, Terrence confronted me. "Mom, 30 days? Where are we supposed to find a place in 30 days? The same places everyone else looks. Rental listings. Apartment complexes. Family. Our family is you. Janelle has parents. Ask them. Her parents are barely making it themselves. They can't take in 4 people. Then figure it out, Terrence. You're resourceful. You'll manage." David Chen pulled me aside before I could say anything else I might regret. "Angela, let's go. You won. Don't give them ammunition by engaging here." I walked away from my son in that courthouse hallway. He looked defeated, broken, and part of me wanted to fix it, wanted to tell him that everything would be okay, that they could stay a little longer while they found something affordable, that maybe I'd help with a security deposit. But I didn't. because that's what I'd been doing for 18 months. Fixing things. Making it easier. Enabling behavior that should never have been enabled. And look where that got me. Over the next 2 weeks, Terrence and Janelle searched desperately for housing. Their credit wasn't great because of the medical debt. Their income wasn't impressive because Janelle was only making $2,400 monthly freelancing, and Terrence made $52,000 a year. Most landlords wanted combined income of 3 times the monthly rent, which at Baltimore's average prices meant they needed to be making at least $6,000 monthly. They were making $5,800 before taxes, less than $4,800 after. They got rejected from 6 apartments, too much debt, not enough income. References that included me, and I declined to provide a positive reference because I wouldn't lie for them. With 1 week left before the court-ordered move-out date, Terrence called me at midnight. "Mom, we found a place. 2-bedroom apartment in Parkville, $1,550 a month. But we need $4,650 to move in. First month, last month, security deposit. We don't have it. We've applied for loans, got rejected. Credit cards are maxed. Mom, please, I'm begging you, help us." I looked at Leonard's photo on my wall, thought about what he would say. Leonard had been soft-hearted, would have helped immediately, would have said family comes first, always. But Leonard hadn't lived to see his son enable his wife's cruelty. Hadn't lived to see Janelle try to steal everything we'd built. "Mom, are you there? Did you hear me? We need $4,650 or we're going to be homeless." The kids, Mom. Think about Kendra and Tyler. I was thinking about them. Had been thinking about them this entire time. 2 innocent children caught in their parents' mess. But I was also thinking about accountability, about consequences. About the difference between helping and enabling. "Terrence, I'll help you. But not Janelle." What does that mean? It means I'll loan you the money, you specifically, with a written agreement, monthly payments, interest, a real loan, not a gift, and the money goes directly to the landlord, not through Janelle's hands. "Mom, Janelle is my wife. You can't separate us like that." "I can and I am. Your wife tried to steal from me. I'm not giving her access to more of my money. But you're my son. And those are my grandchildren. I won't let them sleep in a car because their mother made terrible choices. She'll never agree to this. Then I guess you'll need to figure something else out." Silence. Long, painful silence. Then, quietly, "Can I come talk to you? In person? Tomorrow?" "You can come alone, not with Janelle." Terrence showed up at my Greenmount Avenue duplex the next evening after his shift at Hopkins. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. Weight loss. The stress was destroying him. "The apartment is perfect," he said. 2 bedrooms, small but safe, near Kendra's school. "We can make it work." "But Mom, $4,650? We've never had that much saved at once. Between the medical debt payments and the regular bills, we're barely surviving month to month." "I know. That's why you need help." "But Terrence, I need you to understand something. This loan isn't about the money. It's about whether you're willing to set boundaries with Janelle. Whether you can acknowledge that what she did was wrong." "She knows it was wrong." "Does she?" "Because she hasn't apologized to me. Hasn't admitted she tried to steal my property. She's just upset she got caught. She's ashamed, embarrassed. She doesn't know how to face you." Shame and accountability aren't the same thing. One is about feeling bad, the other is about making amends. Terrence sat on my couch, head in his hands. "What do you want from her, Mom? A formal apology? Public confession?" "I want her to understand that actions have consequences. That you can't mistreat people and expect them to keep helping you. That family isn't a resource to exploit when convenient. And if she apologizes? If she admits everything? Will you forgive her? That was the question I'd been avoiding. Could I forgive Janelle? Did I even want to? I don't know, maybe eventually, but forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, doesn't mean going back to how things were. The trust is broken, Terrence. That doesn't repair itself just because someone says sorry. What about us? You and me? Is our relationship broken too? I looked at my son, the boy I'd raised, the man who'd stood by while his wife tried to destroy me, who'd made excuses instead of setting boundaries, who'd chosen the path of least resistance instead of doing what was right. That depends on you, on whether you can be a man who stands up for what's right, even when it's hard, even when it means confronting your wife, even when it costs you something. I love her, Mom. I know you do. But love without boundaries isn't love. It's enabling. And it destroys both people. I wrote a check for $4,650 that night, made Terrence sign a loan agreement, $150 monthly payments for 31 months, no interest because he was my son, but formal, legal, documented. I gave the check directly to the Parkville landlord. Janelle never touched it. They moved out of my Harford Road duplex on October 31st. I wasn't there, couldn't watch them pack up and leave. Couldn't see Kendra crying or Tyler confused about why they were moving again. Instead, I stayed at the Greenmount property and waited for Patricia to confirm they were gone. All clear, she texted at 4 p.m. They took their personal belongings. Left the furniture like you said they could. Place is empty. I drove over that evening, walked through my duplex for the first time in 2 months. It felt different, smaller somehow. The furniture was there, but the life was gone. Leonard's recliner looked sad and worn. The kitchen where I'd made thousands of meals felt hollow. I sat in Leonard's chair and cried. Not because I missed Terrence and Janelle. Because I'd won the battle but lost something bigger. My relationship with my son was damaged. Maybe permanently. My grandchildren were growing up thinking their grandmother chose property over family, and I was alone in this house that was supposed to be full of love, but was now just full of ghosts. Mrs. Washington came by the next morning with a casserole. Angela, honey, you did the right thing. Don't let anyone tell you different. Did I? Because it doesn't feel right. It feels like I lost my family. You lost people who were taking advantage of you. That's different than losing family. Terrence is my son. Terrence is a grown man who made choices. He chose to enable his wife's behavior. He chose not to defend you. He chose comfort over integrity. You didn't make him do any of that. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd just set boundaries, and Terrence had decided those boundaries were too high a price to pay. But knowing that intellectually didn't make it hurt less emotionally. 3 weeks later, Janelle's criminal fraud case was resolved. The state's attorney offered a plea deal. Janelle would plead guilty to 1 count of misdemeanor fraud, pay a $2,500 fine, complete 100 hours of community service, and serve 2 years of probation. No jail time if she complied with all terms. Raymond Foster advised her to take it. She did. The plea hearing was brief. Judge Williams asked Janelle if she understood what she'd done wrong. Yes, Your Honor. I took money for a property I didn't have authority to rent. It was wrong. I'm sorry. Who are you sorry to? Janelle looked at me for the first time since the charges were filed. I'm sorry to Mrs. Barron. She helped our family and I repaid that kindness by trying to take advantage of her. I was wrong. I'm deeply sorry. The words sounded rehearsed, practiced, like Raymond Foster had written them and Janelle had memorized them to avoid jail, but they were said, publicly, on record. An acknowledgement, even if not a genuine one. After the hearing, Terrence approached me in the hallway. Mom, thank you for not pushing for jail time, for helping us with the apartment, for everything. I didn't do it for Janelle. I did it for you and the kids. I know, And I know things between us aren't good. But maybe we can work on that? Maybe start over? Maybe. But Terrence, starting over means things will be different. Different boundaries. Different expectations. Different relationship. I'm not going back to being the person who enables bad behavior and gets walked over. I understand. Do you? Because understanding and actually changing are two different things. 6 months later, March 2025, I was sitting in my Harford Road duplex, the home I'd fought to keep, drinking coffee in Leonard's chair. The house was quiet. Too quiet. But it was mine. All mine. No one plotting to steal it. No one lying about my competence. No one taking advantage of my kindness. The legal case was closed. Janelle had completed 40 hours of her community service, was making her fine payments on schedule, staying out of trouble during probation. The 3 couples she'd defrauded had been fully refunded. My legal fees had been paid. The property was back under my complete control. Terrence had made 6 monthly loan payments, $150 each time, always on schedule, never late. He was keeping his word about that at least. But our relationship remained fractured. We talked maybe once every 2 weeks. Brief conversations, surface-level updates. How are the kids? How's work? The weather? Nothing real. Nothing deep. The trust that had been broken wasn't rebuilding itself just because time was passing. I saw Kendra and Tyler once a month now. Supervised visits at a McDonald's place in Parkville, neutral territory where neither Terrence nor Janelle had to come to my house. The kids would run and play while I sat with coffee watching them. They were growing up. Kendra had lost 2 teeth. Tyler had learned to read. But they were growing up without their grandmother being part of their daily lives. Without Saturday morning pancakes at my house. Without stories about their grandfather Leonard. Without the kind of relationship grandparents and grandchildren are supposed to have. "Grandma, why don't you come to our house anymore?" Kendra had asked me last month. "Because things are complicated, baby girl. Grown-up things that don't make sense." Mommy says you're mad at her. Are you? How do you explain to a 9-year-old that her mother tried to steal from you? That anger isn't quite the right word for the mixture of hurt and disappointment and betrayal you feel? I'm working on not being mad, but sometimes when people hurt you, it takes a long time to feel better about them. Did Mommy hurt you bad? Yeah, baby. She did. The church community had slowly forgiven Terrence and Janelle. Not forgotten, but forgiven. Pastor Reynolds had counseled them, worked with them on rebuilding trust. They'd returned to greater hope in January, after 3 months away. The whispers had mostly stopped. The judgment had softened. People were willing to give them a second chance. But I wasn't sure I was. Second chances require believing that someone has actually changed, and I hadn't seen evidence of real change from Janelle. Just compliance with court orders. Just doing the minimum required to avoid jail. That's not transformation, that's survival. Patricia had found a new tenant for Unit B after James moved to Florida to be closer to his daughter. Young couple, both teachers. They reminded me of Leonard and me 30 years ago, starting out. Working hard, building something together. I gave them a fair rent, $1,450 monthly. They were good tenants, quiet, respectful, paid on time. My rental portfolio was doing well. All 8 properties were fully occupied. Income was steady. I'd started a small scholarship fund at Booker T. Washington Elementary for students whose parents worked in city schools, $5,000 annually for a graduating 8th grader. Something Leonard would have loved. But success felt hollow when you had no one to share it with. Last week, Terrence called with unexpected news. "Mom, Janelle's starting therapy. Real therapy, not court-ordered. She's paying for it herself. Working with a counselor about entitlement and boundaries and how her shame about her own family's financial struggles made her resentful of others." "That's good. I'm glad she's getting help." "She wanted me to tell you that. Wanted you to know she's actually working on changing, not just going through the motions. Terrence, I hope that's true, for her sake, for your sake, for the kid's sake, but it doesn't change what happened. It doesn't erase the lies or the betrayal or the 6 months of legal hell she put me through. I know. But maybe it means something could be different in the future? Maybe not now, but eventually? Maybe. But I wasn't holding my breath. The hardest part about all of this wasn't the money, or the property, or even the legal battle. It was realizing that I'd spent 35 years raising Terrence to be a man of integrity, and when it mattered most, he'd chosen comfort over character. He'd watched his wife mistreat his mother and said nothing. He'd made excuses. He'd enabled abuse because confronting it was too hard. That failure wasn't just Janelle's. It was mine too. Somewhere in raising my son, I'd taught him that keeping peace was more important than standing up for what's right. That avoiding conflict mattered more than defending family. That love meant accepting anything, even cruelty, even betrayal, without consequences. I wouldn't make that mistake again. The boundaries I'd set weren't punishment. They were protection. Protection for both of us, because real love requires honesty, requires accountability, requires saying this far and no further. That is Angela Barron's story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community come together over these powerful stories about family betrayal, property theft, and the impossible choices between protecting yourself and protecting relationships. Real question. If you were Angela, what would you have done? Would you have moved out and set the trap like she did? Would you have confronted Janelle immediately when you overheard that phone call? Or would you have stayed silent to avoid destroying your son's marriage? Tell me in the comments. Hit that like button if this story made you feel something. Share it if you know someone dealing with financial exploitation from family members, someone whose elderly parent is being taken advantage of, someone who's being manipulated by a daughter-in-law or son-in-law who sees them as a burden instead of a blessing. And subscribe for more raw, real stories about elder financial abuse, entitled In-Laws, the impossible choices parents have to make when their children enable mistreatment, and what happens when you realize that setting boundaries means losing people you love. Thanks for watching. Sometimes the people living in your home are the ones plotting against you. Sometimes helping family means enabling their worst behavior. Sometimes the only way to protect what you built is to risk losing who you love. And sometimes choosing self-respect over family peace is the loneliest, most painful, most necessary decision you'll ever make. See you in the next video.